Hi YouTubers, good morning, it's Rob Muffet. Guys, they were making some bread in the Vitamix mixer. This is the original recipe. I've never done this before. It's really cool. You can grind the grain in the Vitamix and then knead the dough right inside the Vitamix. It makes super bread. That is the first I've ever made, and it came out perfect. It's so full of big holes for making super toast or something in the panini grill. It's excellent flavor. But we're using the original recipe that came with the advertisement that was sold with the Vitamix years ago. It's fantastic advertising, by the way. It has a recipe, very simple. You're going to just add the ingredients to the dough or the flour after it's been ground inside the Vitamix. 1/4 cups of water, a pack of yeast, teaspoon of salt, tablespoon of cooking oil, tablespoon of sweetener. And then just pour it on top of the ground flour and then mix it up. The interesting thing is it asks you to practice mixing because you want to use the shortest strokes possible. You're not blending this, you're just trying to knead it up. You want to first mix it by doing 6 up and down strokes very quickly, and then start kneading it by doing 4 down strokes. And then when it makes a ball, pop it down with the spatula. Here we're just practicing the up and down strokes to make them short as possible, and because that's something you don't normally do. You usually just use the switch, turn it on and turn it off. You're just trying to make it go as off and on as quickly as possible. And then just start adding the ingredients. The first ingredient is just to grind the wheat berries. We're using 2 cups and we're going to grind them. In my case, 2 minutes and 20 seconds. I want a little bit finer grind flour. It recommends 2 minutes, but you can do it more if you like to make it finer. And that's what I did. The interesting thing is the Vitamix, when it makes the flour, it becomes warm, so that's something that helps the yeast when it's making the dough rise, because everything's nice and warm and toasty. After you get your flour to where you like it, you can, if you have all of your ingredients measured out, you can just pour them in right on, just like a bread maker. Electric bread maker. You're going to just be making the dough inside. I used a bagged yeast, which I like a lot, and 1/4 cups of water, some salt, and I didn't have regular sugar, so I used some brown sugar. I used a tablespoon. It's optional, or actually the oil was optional. It does ask you to have some sugar for the yeast, but you don't have to put the yeast in the sugar water. Just put it on top, which is a little different than some recipes. And now you just want to mix 6 up and down strokes after you get all your ingredients to mix it all up, and then you're going to start kneading by doing 4 down strokes. And in my case, I used 1¼ cups of water. I'm going to find out that was a little bit too wet, so I had to end up adding some extra flour I had ground earlier, which I use in a electric bread maker. But you can also use oatmeal or golden ground flax meal or something if you do have to add extra flour. I find it's always better to add extra flour than extra water. So it's better to have a little wetter than drier, I think. So I can tell I've never made this before in the Vitamix, so I'm not really sure what's going on. So I don't know if that's normal. So I'm going to mix this a few more times till I realize that it is just too wet. I'm going to have to add some flour. But also, if you notice, I keep putting the lid back on each time. You don't need to do that when you're making the bread. Once you get it ground up and the wet ingredients the first time, you can leave it off. I didn't realize I'm going to wear out the latches. And that rubber plug, that's something that I put on so I could put a vacuum on my Vitamix. I have a video about it in my playlist if you want to check it out. I've got several Vitamix videos. But I can see here that it's just not working. It's just so too wet. So I'm going to add a little flour right now. There we go. I think about a tablespoon and a half, not too much. But you don't have to add flour. You can add oatmeal or you can use flaxseed. And once it starts making the ball, you just want to do it like 4 downstrokes, makes a ball, and then you take the spatula and then you just punch it down. It actually says something in the literature in the recipe about using a fist. I'm thinking you don't want to use you don't want to put your hand inside the Vitamix at any time. This was this was back in the old days when they didn't have all the safety regulations that we have today that people get all crazy about. But yeah, it said something about putting your fist in there. I don't think we want to do that. You want to punch it down with a spatula. Don't punch it down with a fist, even though the Vitamix isn't on. So now you see the ball. It's starting to form. So each time it forms, just punch it down. And if you've done this before, it should take 3 minutes. 2 minutes to grind the grain, and then a minute to actually get everything wet and form a ball and keep punching it down. So it really shouldn't take you more than 3 minutes, or maybe 4 if you know what you're doing. I've never done this before. I mean, I've made bread before, but I've not ground the grain and then actually kneaded the dough inside the Vitamix. But it makes surprisingly tasty bread, considering how little kneading was done to this dough. It's amazing. The bread, like I said, I don't think it makes the best sandwich bread in the world, but as far as like toasted bread or grilled cheese sandwiches or stuff on the panini grill, it's got such a hearty flavor and so full of holes. It's just like an English muffin has all those little holes, but it's not hard and tough like an English muffin is. It's just delicious. I'm going to keep making this bread for a long time. I'm going to start adding some flaxseed to it too. But you're going to see in a second what it looks like after it's baked. So this is about enough time. We got a greased up pan. We're going to put the dough in there and let it sit and rise up. Now the recipe says to let it rise up to 1/8 of an inch of the lid of the pan, of the side of the pan, but I let mine rise a lot higher. And if you let it rise too high, it's going to fall in the center. It's not going to work out like you hoped. But that's where I did deviate from the recipe. I let it rise maybe a little higher than the recipe calls for. But just put that someplace warm for about half an hour and you keep an eye on it, and you're going to see it rise once that yeast starts working. And you're going to pop it in the oven at 375 degrees for 30-35 minutes. I did mine in a toaster oven for 40 minutes at 400 because my toaster oven doesn't work right. It's ready to bake. That's high enough. Now, that's what it looks like when it comes out. That's perfect, crispy, nice bread on top, nice crust. And once you cut that open, you're going to see so many little air holes in there. It's really chewy, nice flavor, nice texture. It's like I said, I'm used to the really finer texture bread for sandwiches, but for other things, this is perfect bread for like Texas toast or making mini pizzas or grilled cheese sandwiches. So guys, I hope that helps you out and help you make your bread in the Vitamix, and you all come back and watch more. I put new videos on every week. Been doing it for 11 years and got tons of cool people. Check them out that feature on my channel. New stuff every week, guys. Hope you come back.